Hello, SIBO doctor community. It's Dr. Narala Jacobi with another episode of Do It Yourself Gut Health. We have been doing these Facebook Lives weekly here at the SIBO Doctor. And we just released a video yesterday actually about how to sprout and soak grains and legumes. This was with our clinical nutritionist, Anne Kreiner, who also helped me write the vegetarian SIBO biphasic diet. And she talked about how to do, like I said, soak different grains and sprout legumes to reduce the FODMAP content, etc. So I thought what I'd do today is just talk about the biphasic diet a little bit, because in our Facebook groups, I just realized that I'm not connected. Okay, let me start again. Ooh, that was bad. So yes, Dr. Narala Jacobi here, the SIBO doctor, and we've been coming to you every week and really wanting to help you improve your digestive health. I know a lot of people come to our Facebook groups, either Facebook SIBO Lifestyle or the SIBO Doctor Practitioner Forum or the SIBO Doctor page to learn more about SIBO and how to treat it. And there's a lot of discussions around different treatments. And so I thought I'd take today to talk about the biphasic diet, because there's always new people joining us on these chats and also in the group. So for those of you who haven't heard about the different types of biphasic diets, we'll talk about that today. We have a lot of training courses for practitioners and for patients to help themselves. And the biphasic diet was the first sort of thing that I created many years ago to help me structure my treatment plan for my patients. And out of that, so this is what we started with. I'll just put this in the stream as well. So the SIBO biphasic diet is a 3-month protocol that's divided into 2 phases, as the name implies. And phase 1 is, oh, good, Vera, thank you for telling me that you still be hearing me initially. So the first phase is about pretty dramatic carbohydrate reduction, as well as fruit reduction. There's no fruit, and other types of common food allergens. And the purpose of that is to reduce bacterial fermentation. So that goes on for anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks, depending on where you are in your in how severe SIBO is. And during phase 1, typically what we do as practitioners, we also identify other digestive deficits. So you've heard me talk about bitters or hydrochloric acid. I've done other Facebook Lives about this and the difference and when you would start what. And not everyone needs hydrochloric acid, and not everyone needs bitters. Excuse me, I got a little annoying sort of change of season cough, so I'll do that periodically. It's getting winter here in Australia. It's beautiful. So really, it's about improving. Phase 1 is all about getting people out of acute distress with their SIBO symptoms. And oftentimes, this is the time that the practitioner orders the breath test. So they say, have the breath test and start the phase 1 diet immediately after the breath test, and then follow up in however many weeks. So during that time, often we also give gut healing powders, digestive enzymes, no antimicrobials yet, typically. Then when the patient comes back and there's already some improvement, we usually start antimicrobial therapy. And the reason for that, why we typically wait, is so that we can reduce already bacterial fermentation a little bit, so that when we start killing, the die-off process and side effects won't be as severe. So that's really was the reason why I structured it that way. And it's really amazing to hear the feedback from around the world, because it's a free download. You can get it on the SIBOdoctor.com. And it's a fantastic tool for practitioners and patients alike. A lot of patients out there have been diagnosed with SIBO and really are not getting proper care. And so that was, this diet is a way to help themselves. And that's also why I created the SIBO Success Plan, so that people can help themselves whilst they can't just continue to wait for practitioners to get educated in this topic. And there are a lot of people in need in this world when it comes to SIBO. So that was the initial biphasic diet that I created. Gosh, I think it's 6 years now or so, or maybe even longer. I can't even remember. But it's just a fantastic tool. It's a beautifully designed PDF with some recipes. And as you may know, Rebecca Coombs from the Healthy Gut, she got such success with this diet that she wrote several, not just one, but several cookbooks based on the biphasic diet. And the Healthy Gut is a great resource also for recipes and things like that. But definitely consider getting her books on the topic, and that's the Healthy Gut. And you can also find links to the cookbooks on the SIBOdoctor.com. All right, so that was the regular biphasic diet. Then what we have also for free, the next one in the collection of biphasic diets was, hang on if I can actually do this. Why is this happening? Maybe if I get rid of the regular one. For some reason, it doesn't allow me. Okay, here we go. So the next one in the collection was the SIBO histamine biphasic diet that I co-authored with a fantastic clinical nutritionist and dietitian, Heidi Turner, who is in Seattle, Washington, and just fantastic resource for people who have a lot of food sensitivities. So what happens is when you have SIBO, the gases in the upper gut can destroy or damage enzymes that are lining the small intestine called the brush motor enzymes. And one of those enzymes is diamine oxidase, which is an enzyme that typically breaks down histamine that's found in food. Histamine is pretty common in food, and it's usually not a problem unless you can't really process histamine. And people with SIBO often have this situation where they have a couple of things happening, not just SIBO. So they have SIBO with bacterial overgrowth, but then they develop histamine intolerance. They can also have SIFO, which is small intestine fungal overgrowth, and that can also contribute to histamine problems. So that was really the reason, because I saw a lot of histamine problems in my clinic. And I really needed a diet that wasn't just a low histamine diet. It was histamine and low FODMAPs or low fermentable carbohydrate as well. So we had to create this from scratch, Heidi and I, and our good friend Alison Seebecker also was involved by reviewing it. And so it was kind of like a group project. And again, a free download, a free resource for you if you consider that you have some food sensitivities. It's great for other food sensitivities as well, because histamine, in my experience, is sort of the mother of all food sensitivities in a way, because it is such a wide, well, I should say that histamine receptors are in practically every organ system. And so you can have symptoms that are quite diffuse and a lot of symptoms that are related to histamine intolerance. So anything from cramping when you have your period to hives when you eat something that you're sensitive to brain fog, headaches, diarrhea, abdominal cramping. The list goes on of the type of symptoms that you have, and you might want to consider doing this diet if you've been treated for SIBO and you've cleared it, but you're still not any better. Then you want to maybe consider histamine intolerance. Okay, next one up. So then what we did, hang on a second. Then what we did, we decided that vegetarians and vegans have been ignored in this whole process because typically when people reduce carbohydrates and starches from their diet in order to treat SIBO, it's quite difficult to be a vegetarian and remove that. You're not left with much. So we didn't want to have a diet. I didn't want to have a diet that basically just told vegetarians and vegans to remove the meat and animal products and live with whatever was left. So what happened then, I talked to Anne, and Anne is a fantastic clinical nutritionist here at the Biome Clinic. And the Biome Clinic is our clinic where a lot of us who are SIBO experts are working. So we are multi-modality team. We have Anne, our clinical nutritionist and naturopath. We have Sarita Ford, who's been on this show as well with her. She's a holistic counselor and hypnotherapist, which is super useful when you're dealing with SIBO and IBS. And we have another practitioner, Emily Sugars, here as well. So we really are, and we refer a lot to different specialists. So we are quite a well-rounded clinic. And Anne gave this fantastic demonstration about the importance of soaking and using different mediums to soak your grains versus your legumes. So have a look at that video that we released yesterday. And we decided to pre-record it because our previous sprouting video is so grainy, I can't even make out what was the sprout, if it was a lentil or buckwheat or rice or whatever. So we might actually, re-record that at some point, but it takes always a bit of effort to do these videos. Okay. So I'm not so sure about some of the comments, but again, the Facebook Lives really are about questions. So the vegetarian biphasic diet, what we've done is basically created a diet that allows for legumes and grains to be consumed after they've been processed or treated in a special way. And that is sprouting and soaking. And what happens during that process is the grain or legume actually uses up its FODMAP in order to produce a sprout or germinate. So this is why it then becomes very digestible. And the benefit of that is you can, even as a non-professed vegetarian or vegan, still reap the benefits of this wonderful diet. It's beautifully put together. I think we have like 12 pages or something crazy like that. Let me see. 12 pages and with beautiful, it's kind of like a booklet, really is a booklet. Here we are. And again, a free download. It's a wonderful tool that you can mix and match the regular biphasic diet with the original and with the vegetarian. So you can actually use foods from the phase 2 or phase 1 interchangeably from either diet. So you can do that. The histamine is a standalone program. So that one can't really be mixed and matched because in that particular diet, we're removing histamine and histamine liberators and FODMAPs. So that's a bit more complicated. Okay, the whole process also is explained in, I think, episode or lesson 2 or 3 of the SIBO success plan that I created for people to help themselves. And in that one, you also get access to the SIBO dispensary guide, which talks about different products that we've used that are very useful for SIBO and different categories, whether that's antimicrobials, probiotics, gut healing nutrients, stuff for constipation. We don't ourselves, we don't have a product range. So we are promoting products or talking about products that we've used in our practice and that have been very successful. So this is a non-commission based thing that we've created, but it's a wonderful resource so that you're not spending your hard-earned money on products that are not very effective. There's a lot of products out there that are definitely not working very well, and a lot of combination products that don't have the accurate amount of ingredients in order to eradicate SIBO. So I'm very particular about that kind of stuff. So that's also part of the SIBO success plan that explains the SIBO biphasic diet. But really, it is 2 phases. It's really straightforward and self-explanatory. We give great instructions in the introductions, etc. And there are already some comments about how the diet and the cookbooks are very helpful. Okay, there were, I think, a few questions about the biphasic diet. And one of them was, if you have a question about the diet, now's your time to ask them, put it in the comments before I sign off. That'll be good, okay? But one of the things that I get most asked about the diet is, what if there's an ingredient that's not listed on this diet? And I usually say, if it's not listed, don't eat it. It's not a forever diet. It's meant to be for 3 months or so, after which you really want to recheck if you have SIBO or not. And if you still have SIBO, you can extend that time period. It's also used as a management diet for people that have chronic relapsing SIBO. Those are the people that may have a damaged migrating motor complex that you'll have probably learned about already. If not, go into the video section of the SIBO Doctor page, where I have a lot of videos about different topics. So it really is a diet that's not meant to be forever. And it makes sense because you don't want to deprive the bacteria in your large intestine, which is where your microbiome really is. You don't want to deprive them of fermentable foods for long. You actually want to promote the growth of those bacteria, just not the SIBO bacteria. So it is a restricted diet for a limited period of time. But again, if there's something on there that you love eating and it's not on there, best is not to do it. And we have kept it specifically to those foods. We are in the process of updating it. There are some new allowed foods, and we do that periodically, where we add foods like cacao was added not too long, well, probably a year or 2 ago now. It goes so quick. And we are in the process of reviewing it again and sort of updating it. So, okay, there are some questions coming in. How long after starting the histamine biphasic diet do you typically see histamine reduction, and when do you know when to move on to phase 2? Great question, Tanya. So in my experience, when you start the histamine biphasic diet, you should see rapid symptom improvement. And that should be, when I say rapid, I've seen it as rapid as 24 hours. And sometimes it takes a bit longer, but definitely if after a week you have 0 improvement, I would question if this is the right diet, or if you're somehow still getting substances in. It's possible that you have a tremendous yeast overgrowth. Yeast has a big connection with histamine symptoms because yeast endotoxins and histamine get detoxified through aldehyde pathway. And so when you have a lot of yeast, it can clog up that pathway. So sometimes it takes a bit of time before that pathway clears up for the histamine to get cleared. So that is also a possibility. But typically I see very, very rapid symptom improvement. And then we have kept the, Heidi and I, we really did not want to extend this diet because it is the most restrictive of all 3. So typically we say, look, do the guidelines as outlined and move on to phase 2 when it's appropriate. As soon as your symptoms start to improve, you can start to add in histamine liberators like limes or lemons, etc. So have a look at the handout and check that out. But great question. So Jen asks, can this be done without soy? I'm assuming you mean the vegetarian biphasic diet. Yes, of course. You don't have to eat soy if you don't want to. It's just a protein option. You will have to eat more legumes, other types of legumes, or use protein shakes or something like that. And that can be problematic for some people. How do you move off the diet? Yes, Vera, I know, right? We don't have a handout for that. It is a project that we're working on. And typically practitioners, the way I do it is I tell people increase the portion sizes first of phase 2. And then typically I say, what is it that you miss the most? Now, if it's pizza and ice cream, of course, I'm not going to say go for it. But if it's something, a vegetable that's not on the list, or like I mean, we did add potatoes back in, so it's really not that difficult. But sometimes people want to experiment with different things like alcohol and different sweeteners and things like that. And so I say, look, all right, we'll do this in moderation first with the foods that are most craved. Typically, I don't like to start with sugary things, but different grains are easy to add in. Sometimes the sauces can be added back in. You definitely garlic and onions you can test them out to see if there's still a problem. They're sort of the way up there on the list of high FODMAPs. Sometimes things like apples or pears that are typically quite high in FODMAPs. So there's also a FODMAP app, which is you can download from the App Store. And the reason why I don't usually go with that necessarily is because it allows for a lot more foods than I allowed. And I found a lot of people that were purely following FODMAP from Monash University. They were still having SIBO symptoms. And it's not until they're on the biphasic diet that they become a lot more asymptomatic or symptom-free. So that's the reason I created the biphasic diet. It was because it's not just based on FODMAP at all. There's other factors there. So sometimes adding in things like dairy, if they, increasing dairy amounts, etc. So that's really how it is. But we are working on it because we want to move from the biphasic diet into a diet that's really health promoting to the microbiome overall. And that'll include polyphenols, like green tea and things like that, which are already allowed on the biphasic diet, but it's really about now focusing on restoration. Okay. Can MCAS be caused by Candida? So MCAS stands for mast cell activation syndrome. And if you think about the spectrum of simple histamine intolerance, mast cell activation syndrome is on the other side of that spectrum. It's really an intense condition that has multiple systems dysregulated. And Candida can be a factor. It's usually not the only underlying cause. I'd say another issue in the mold family, though, and that is environmental mold exposure, which yeast is a part of in a way because it is a fungus. So fungal elements in general, environmental mold is probably one of the biggest triggers for MCAS. So if you have MCAS, get your house mold assessed and listen to the podcast I did with Jill Krista a couple months back on mold and SIBO. Big connection, not just MCAS. Okay. Can the root cause of SIBO be an overgrowth of Candida, and how do you know? No. The root cause of SIBO is bacterial, not fungal in origin. But you can have SIFO, it can occur simultaneously. SIFO and SIBO can occur simultaneously. And SIFO stands for small intestine fungal overgrowth. And it's pretty common. It's in one research study from Dr. Rao said there is about a 25% what we call comorbidity, which means that 25% of people that have SIBO also have SIFO. I actually think that number is higher. So it's often one of the reasons why I use herbs is because herbs often have a combined action on fungus or yeast and bacteria. Next question. Can gluten-free bread or flour be eaten after phase 2 of the diet? Yes, that would be something that's appropriate to check out. Yes. Is SIBO a big cause of brain fog? Yes, it can be. I find that SIFO, small intestine fungal overgrowth, is often a more common cause of brain fog. And when I see somebody with brain fog, I think of that as well. Can you suggest herbs for Candida in the lungs? So that could be coccidiomycosis or one of those things. That's a really tough thing. And I'm not going to mention that in this Facebook Live because you're going to have to go on very likely on systemic antifungals in the ketoconazole, fluconazole type of range, if not stronger. And I had a very good colleague, an environmental naturopathic doctor, pass away from that, and it's a very tough thing. So no, I'm not going to just list a herb, and you need professional supervision and advice with that if you have fungal elements in the lung. Okay. Can you recommend a prokinetic? I've tried Modal Pro and I've noticed no difference. Andrea, go to the prokinetic Facebook Live I did, where I reviewed all of them. There's also a podcast on the SIBO Doctor podcast with Dr. Alison Seebecker called SIBO and Prokinetics. So go and do your research in those two places, either the video section of this Facebook page or the SIBO Doctor podcast. Oh, Jesus, the questions are coming in fast and thick. All right, I love it. Andrea asks, how does histamine biphasic diet relate to gastritis? How to settle gastritis while remaining low histamine and not feeding SIBO? That's why you would do the histamine biphasic diet. It's great for acid reflux. I forgot to mention that. And gastritis, because histamine triggers HCl or hydrochloric acid release. And that's why medications like Zantac, for example, are actually histamine blockers. And they block the release of hydrochloric acid. So reflux and burning is a common symptom with histamine intolerance. That is why a histamine biphasic diet is perfect for this type of problem. Okay, I have gastritis. Does anything help? Histamine biphasic diet, give it a go. With gastritis, the problem is the mucosal surface and the lack of mucosal rebuilding very often. So if you don't have H. pylori, which is a common cause of this problem, but you have chronic gastritis, you might want to look or get ruled out that you don't have something like atrophic gastritis, which is where you don't make enough stomach acid. And that's why, and have a look in the videos as well, because I think I did one on gastritis, if I'm not mistaken. But also, basically rebuilding the mucosa. And one really good nutrient for that is zinc carnosine. But there are lots of other reasons why that might be happening. Chronic stress is a big factor here as well. How long we need to be on the diet? Do we need to do a SIBO retest? Ideally, yes, you might want to retest. And typically, I recommend being on the protocol for 3 months and then retesting. And then if you're clear, you can start to move off. If you still have it, you might need to do another booster round of the diet and perhaps other herbs or other treatments if you're still having it, if you still have SIBO. Does Matula tea help with SIBO? Is there a common occurrence of H. pylori with SIBO? You know what? I don't know what Matula tea is, so I can't comment on that. Never heard of it. So if it's an antimicrobial, possibly. But teas generally are pretty weak, right? Other than, I love green tea. Green tea has polyphenols. It's very tonifying to mucosal membranes. But there's a common occurrence of H. pylori and SIBO in a roundabout way. We do see that in that H. pylori, which is the bacteria in the stomach that causes gastritis and ulcers. It creates an alkaline environment, and so it reduces actually stomach acid. So that is a way that it can be connected to the occurrence of SIBO. It's not realistically the cause of SIBO. It's more the result of low stomach acid. Okay, excellent. Now, big announcement before I take the next question and probably sign off pretty soon because I'm trying to keep these to 30 minutes. Is, again, review all of the videos that we've released. Check out Anne's sprouting video, fascinating about buckwheat. And buckwheat might be a good transition grain, depending on how you prepare it. So check out that video with Anne from yesterday. We are going to every other week, starting this week. So not next week. We won't be back with I won't be back with a Facebook Live. We are going to record some videos and release them as sort of in-betweeners. I think next week we'll have something again from Sarita Ford, and we'll see what we can come up with. Whatever topics you want to see, if we can do a video about, whether that's about the diet or food preparation or some topic that you wanted to always know about with SIBO that I haven't already covered, please put it into the comments, because we love inspiration, and it's always a wonderful thing when we're like, oh wow, we've never talked about that. So that would be great. If it's related to nutrition or food, if it's related to SIBO in general, or if it's related to mental, emotional aspects, all those are great topic. Okay, a few more questions and I'm turning off. So let's see here. How do we increase stomach acid naturally? Sue, listen to the, there's a couple of Facebook Lives ago. It's in the video section about HCl and bitters, right? So naturally increasing it, you're going to still have to do some nutrition. So I think it's discussed in that video. Some question about, aside from antimicrobial herbs and probiotics, are there any other herb supplements that shouldn't be prescribed to patients while doing the prep diet for the SIBO test? Wow, great question. Okay, well, what I usually do is I say, unless it's absolutely essential, I say stop everything for 24 hours. It's not a big deal. I do that with a lot of my tests, whether that's the organic acid test, the stool test, whatever. I just say, look, just don't take anything for 24 hours, unless it's essential, of course, medication. I'd say also antifungals. So unless they're prescription antifungals, if they're herbal antifungals, I would also stop them, because there's often a crossover reaction. But other than that, I can't think of anything right now. But I usually, when it comes to herbs, because they have multitude of actions, I ask them to stop everything. Okay, there's somebody, Stacy, apple cider vinegar. Oh, that was probably in response to how do you increase stomach acid naturally. Incorrect. It's not how you increase stomach acid. It just takes the place of it, right? So in order to naturally increase, we do need a few nutrients. How did I get suckered into the HCl conversation again? Watch the video. Julie says, I saw the buckwheat video this morning. Amazing. Listen, I sat there and filmed it, and I was just like, oh my God, I had no idea this massive amount of snot-like mucus would come out of buckwheat. So that was fascinating, which is wonderful bacterial feeding snot-like mucus from buckwheat when you don't have SIBO. So listen to the video, it's good. Let's see here. Okay, Eric, hello, how you going? Hope all is well in Wisconsin. Okay, now I think that's it. Everybody, do digestive enzymes help with histamine reactions? If the enzyme is diamine oxidase, right? And it's hard to find, and you can't have a vegetarian source of it unless, no, I haven't come across a vegetarian source. So that's the enzyme that breaks down histamine. Okay, there was a question. Should you take DAO if you're doing low histamine diet? Great question. You don't theoretically need it, right? Because if you're not eating that food, you might not need that enzyme whilst you're on it, but it's a great one to use as you transition off of it. Okay, peeps, wonderful questions as per usual. We're not coming on the air next week, so save your questions for 2 weeks from now when I'm coming back for Facebook Live with your questions. And again, due to the poor quality of this video streaming service that I have, they told me that my internet connection isn't good enough. And so I can't do instructional videos on this platform. So we're recording them and then releasing them as we have them. So until next time, I hope you are all doing well and emerging from the COVID quarantine and enjoying your life out there, wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time.